life is a bit unfair because we started 15 minutes late and we are trying to catch up. Uh, well, very interesting presentations, and thank you to the speakers, and also, very interesting questions in the audience, and you will see that they addressed a slightly different field. So if I just go through, some of the key points that were highlighted during that session. We started with looking at the impact of crisis in terms of financial implications, and this was what the first presentation started with, and looking at the responses, which was in fact talking about organic growth, which was talking about what are the new procurement systems that can be set in place in order to actually overcome that situation. But the net of it was that one of the key messages we got from Imanchu was, trying to keep agility in the business in the way that the supply chain, I have, to adapt to the fast-changing environments. And there was also, a closure related to the opportunities related to innovation, which is in fact, a key driver for future success. Then Andres didn't mention one thing which occurred to me whilst he was getting to the stage, which is in fact a stressful situation in a crisis environment should generate more coffee consumption, right? But anyway, just setting that apart. Andres addressed the change in the consumption patterns as a result, of the global model which is developed, which is in fact, having an influence on the ways the supply chain efficiencies are being developed, with the Colombian coffee experience. He also highlighted the difficulty and the linkage, and we should have, gone through several hours of in-depth discussions on, how to link hundreds of thousands of farmers to actually a global, world. And this is a fascinating experience because, there is a long history of, the Coffee de Colombia going to market, but there is also, the need to adapt to realities. And the latest comment, which was, by the way, on currency fluctuations, is actually a perfect illustration of how, an organization can link global markets to these small farmers' environments. There was an interesting reference to partnership models, and Andres hinted on the relationship with Coca-Cola, for example, that would again lend itself to further explorations. What are actually the association alliances and joint venture models which a business can take to actually improve its performance going global. Andres also mentioned the notion of just being a product supplier, but being very service oriented. He mentioned that the USP, the unique selling proposition of Café de Colombia, is around freshness and quality, but he also led us to think about the notion of service and the requirements to become a supplier to global corporations such as Nestle. Well, then he finished by telling us, the ambitious plans of growth of, his organization, and, how stretched an organization can be with ambitious plans like I indicated to us a 40% growth by 2014. How can a small and medium-sized business in Colombia go to global scale and be able to match, the big challenges of such, ambitious growth requirements? Then Sungju, led us onto a slightly different experience with, in fact, the interesting perspective of how can a small enterprise, women-owned as a matter of fact, be taking on the challenge with very well-known, international European big brands in the luxury market, and what is required in order to be able to take on that challenge. The history that she went through, focused at one point in time on the acquisition of the NCM, global license in 2005, and then the rapid expansion. Now, the challenge again here is how can a small business that is a fast-growing business, that is global, like in 35 countries, actually manage the sales and distribution in a global environment, which is now, with a presence in 35 countries. So that is again putting a lot of stress on the organization. But Sunju hinted on some of the responses like the IT that was hinted to as a way of getting the proper support to be able to manage these global operations. Of course, on the way there was an issue which was at the side, which was not directly related to supply chain, which is what Sunju highlighted, which is related to brand power, and the way a small business in a developing country can really go aggressively and position itself against the big global brands. And then Jing, went ahead and was looking at the opportunities and the way the importance of relocation actually is positioning enterprises such as the Dell Group for being profitable and successful on global markets. Now, on the way, there was a very interesting consideration linked to bundled outsourcing, which is in fact also putting a lot of questions related to the complexity of actually tying in different sourcing bases. She talked about the decoupling of manufacturing components, and that is really certainly one of the models which we see becoming a standard on a global scale. And then she hinted on the sort of the niche positioning and what could be the opportunity for small and medium-sized enterprises in that environment. Which prompted a question which we heard from the audience after that, related to the values and so on, which I will hint to in a second. Yufang gave us a very interesting other perspective on how China is getting positioned to take on the challenge of related to the supply chain environment with the Shanghai Initiative. What is very interesting is that the strategy moves away from just seeing Shanghai as a pure geographic location, but developing the next thinking of the Shanghai seaport facility as being a total service offer for that groups all the services related to logistics and distribution in the country. And the other interesting message was this hub concept, the ability for Shanghai to connect to different hubs in the world that is seen as a very important competitive advantage to back up the success story of China. So we moved from sort of looking at the market with various experiences to more like the real supply side logistics, and it was a very nice complement in terms of the way of covering within the time allocated all the some of the key points related to supply chain. And the Q&A, interestingly enough, invited us to think about other things, because we talked about values. There was the question raised about cost cutting, cost reduction, and the drive to becoming cost competitive on a global scale. But what does it do to the the values of small and medium-sized organizations, and how do we cope with it? And other very important element was the notion of cultural gap that was addressed, and it was interesting to listen again to Sunju's experience and see what are the responses in terms of organizational set on the human resources side, but also the response in terms of IT tools to be able to cope with that environment. And finally, we had also a very interesting notion put to the table about global world, yes, but what is how do we manage currency fluctuations, and what does it do to the model which is going to market? I just want to finish before we break, and the coffee break. I mean, we have not gone over our time, by the way, but we started with 15 minutes late, and we'll finish like 2 minutes earlier. Thank you, team, and thank you, the audience. But just to finish with, I would like to invite for a round of applause for our speakers and our moderator. Thank you for a job well done.
Thank you very much, Jackie. And thank you everyone for coming, participating, and contributing.